Hello, Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Even though it's called the Swamp, it truly is a gorgeous city. Well, folks, there are about a dozen spending bills that still need to be passed in order to avert a government shutdown, with deadlines coming fast. One is in mid-January, the second in early February. Stopgap measures have been used since October to avert the shutdown, and they may be used again in the new year in order to keep the government open. But some say the government spending problems are just getting out of control. The U.S. added $7 trillion in debt between 2020 and 2022. It's the same amount that it previously took 215 years to amass. Much of that was unprecedented pandemic spending. So, how do we get back to a fiscally responsible government? Some in Congress are considering a bipartisan fiscal commission that would help Congress come up with steps to put the nation in a healthier position. Joining me now live to discuss this and so much more, Executive Vice President for the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Brandon, so good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Terrence.
All right, so before you came, we heard from Representative Rosendale. I'm sure you had a chance to listen to some of that interview. He didn't sound very optimistic or positive about these upcoming budget negotiations. Your thoughts, your concerns?
Yeah, it is hard to be optimistic right now. Listen, we're 2.5 months, more than 2.5 months into the current fiscal year. These are all known deadlines. We know that the fiscal year ends at the end of September each year. And yet we've blown by deadline after deadline, completely unable to reach any kind of agreement to pass these spending bills. And Republicans and Democrats share this blame jointly. Republicans in the House have not been able to come to an agreement amongst themselves. They've continued to shoot themselves in the foot, while the Senate, controlled by Democrats, have only passed a small fraction of their spending bills. They are very much to blame for this impasse that we're facing now, that, of course, taxpayers are going to ultimately get hosed for.
This is somewhat of a theoretical question, but should Congress members be forced to stay in Washington, D.C., not take a break until they get it done, especially when we're up against deadlines like where we are today?
Yeah, I have no problem with that whatsoever. We've tried that before. No budget, no pay. If they can't get the budget done, they don't get their salaries. I think we've proposed other ideas like no budget. If you don't get your budget done, no travel expenses. So all of a sudden you can't hop on an airplane, taxpayer-funded tickets to go back to your district and do whatever. Stay in Washington, do your job, get it done, and let's start getting this fiscal mess under control, because it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, as you showed in that graphic.
You know, the budget is one issue, but the national debt is another, probably even a more perverse issue right now. And it's something that needs to be tackled not just immediately, but also for the long term.
Yeah, you talk about the national debt, and the number that really stands out to me, as we've seen these interest rates skyrocket thanks to the actions of the Fed, the interest payments on the national debt have simultaneously skyrocketed. This past fiscal year, we spent almost $660 billion just to finance our national debt. Not a nickel of that goes to providing health care to veterans or improving our education or anything that we may want out of our federal government. All it does is pay off the debt. And if that doesn't really hit home enough, just think $660 billion, that's more than the entire economy of Argentina or of Sweden. We're paying that just to pay off our national debt. It is ridiculous. And that number is going to continue to skyrocket until Congress can finally get its act together and do something about it.
Brandon, those numbers are astonishing and they take you aback. But put that into context for our viewers. What does that mean for your regular, everyday viewer? Break it down there if you can.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars that we're sharing in terms of this debt burden. That money is applied to each and every one of us, whether you're a senior citizen, somebody in the middle age, or a baby that was just born yesterday. You all have that dollar sign hanging over your head, because that is how much Congress has spent beyond our means. And again, until we get that under control, we're just passing that bill down to our future generations, down to our kids and our grandkids that are eventually going to have to pay for it. Spending today, whether it's financed with current taxes or debt, is eventually going to be paid for in the form of higher taxes. Are we going to take on that higher tax burden? Are we going to force our children to pay that higher tax burden? Or are we going to do the right thing and start balancing our budget, start to trim away at spending, start to restructure our entitlement programs so that they're not making this country go bankrupt?
And it sounds like the bottom line is it's not just about Congress coming up with an agreement on spending. It's about reining in spending. That's the problem.
Yeah, we're not going to fix this problem with a single budget. So whatever agreement that we reach in January or February, it's not one fell swoop. It's about turning that aircraft carrier around, which is going to take months, probably years, maybe even longer to do. But we need to start chipping away at it. We can't let this problem continue to fester. So we need to make whatever cuts we can in this budget. We should attach to that a fiscal commission to look at the long-term drivers of debt, which aren't just the spending bills that the Congress has to pass each and every year, but also, again, those entitlement programs, Medicare, Social Security, making sure we're protecting current and near retirees, but also making sure that we get our fiscal house in order for future generations. Because as of now, these programs are beginning to go bankrupt. We have fiscal imbalances. We're going to exhaust the trust funds related to Social Security in about 10 years. So we got to act now, or the problem's just going to keep getting worse and compounding.
Brandon, the idea of a bipartisan fiscal commission sounds like a great idea, but let's be honest. Do you have much confidence that you can get Democrats and Republicans together on a commission and that anything comes out of it, anything of substance comes out of it?
I share your skepticism, but at the same time, we have to do something. So my sense is let's throw all the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Maybe the fiscal commission works, maybe it doesn't. We've certainly learned some lessons from failed past fiscal commissions, the super committee, and so forth. So hopefully we can structure it in a way that puts everything on the table. Like I said, whether that's defense spending, which Republicans have typically held as a sacred cow, or entitlement spending, which Democrats and oftentimes Republicans have been very hesitant to touch. Let's put it all on the table, make sure that whatever solutions or ideas these commissions come up with go straight to the floor of the House and the Senate for votes, so they can't simply bury these ideas with procedural tactics. Let's see what happens here. And we got to remain as optimistic as we can. This is the holiday season. This is the time for cheer and joy and optimism. So let's pass this fiscal commission and do everything we can to make sure it is successful in its goals.
Well, Brandon, in that vein, I apologize for being a fiscal Scrooge or a political Scrooge. I will do better the next time. Good to talk to you, my friend. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
My pleasure. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.